I never believed in ghosts or monsters. But that night changed everything. I saw a face in the fog, a face that wasn't human. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, something that didn't belong here. The kind of face that sticks in your mind long after the night ends, haunting your thoughts like a warning you can't ignore. It started on a late autumn evening. I had gone out for a walk to clear my head, the kind of walk you take when the world feels heavy and you need space to think. The air was cold and damp, and a thick fog had rolled in, swallowing the streetlights and turning the world into a blurry haze. You know that feeling when everything familiar suddenly feels strange? That's exactly how it was. The fog wasn't just mist, it was like a living thing, wrapping around trees and houses, muffling sounds, making the night feel endless. As I walked further from the town, the silence grew heavier. No cars, no people, just the crunch of my footsteps on wet leaves. My breath came out in short puffs, the cold biting at my skin. I told myself I was being silly, that there was nothing to be afraid of. But deep down, something told me to be alert, to watch closely. Then I saw it. At first, it was just a vague shape in the fog, something pale and still. I stopped, heart starting to beat faster. It was a face, or at least, it looked like one. But it wasn't human. The features were wrong, blurred but sharp at the same time. The eyes seemed too wide, too empty. The mouth. I can't even describe it properly. It was like the face was made of fog itself, shifting and twisting, but somehow real enough to feel like it was staring right at me. I blinked, hoping it would disappear. But it didn't. It stayed there, watching, as if waiting for me to make a move. Every instinct screamed to run, but my feet were frozen. Questions flooded my mind. Was it a trick of the light? My imagination playing games? Or something else entirely? What did that face want? Why was it there? I wanted to turn and go back, but something held me in place. A cold shiver ran down my spine as the fog seemed to thicken around me. The world narrowed to just me and that face, the rest swallowed by the mist. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out everything else. This wasn't just a story I could laugh off later. It was real. And I had no idea what I was dealing with. The fog didn't just linger, it seemed to pulse, as if breathing in time with my own racing heart. That face, still hovering just beyond the veil of mist, grew clearer, sharper in the unnatural silence around me. It wasn't just a shape anymore. It had form, and it was watching me. I squinted, trying to convince myself it was some trick of the fog or my imagination. But there was something too precise, too deliberate about it. The eyes, they weren't eyes like a person's. No whites, no pupils, just two dark hollows that seemed to suck in the dim light. When I looked closer, I swear they glimmered with something alive, almost like embers glowing faintly in the cold. Its mouth was the worst part. Not a smile, not a frown, but a stretch of smooth, pale skin that twitched slightly, like it was trying to form words without a voice. No teeth, no tongue, just an empty, shifting void where a mouth should be. It sent a chill deeper than the cold air ever could. For a moment, I thought I could hear something, soft, like a whisper carried on the wind, but there was no wind. The fog was still, almost oppressive. The only sound was the pounding of my own heart, loud enough to fill the space between us. Was the face trying to speak? Or was my mind making sounds to fill the terrifying silence? I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. My hands trembled as I reached out instinctively, but the fog thickened like a wall between me and that impossible face. It flickered, like smoke blown by an unseen breath, then reformed with a slow, deliberate motion that made my skin crawl. It was watching me. Waiting. I wanted to scream, to run, but the words stuck in my throat, my legs felt like lead. My mind scrambled for a logical explanation, maybe it was a trick of the streetlights, a reflection of something else, or a prank by someone hiding just out of sight. But there was no one. I was alone, completely alone with this thing. The fog swirled closer, colder now, and with it came a sudden, sharp scent, something rotten, like decayed leaves mixed with something metallic. I gagged, covering my mouth, but the smell stayed, wrapping around me like a noose. It felt like the face was exhaling it, breathing out decay and dread. Panic began to claw at my chest. I forced myself to step back, inch by inch, but the fog stretched too far, as if trying to trap me in its icy grip. The face shifted as I moved, following silently, its hollow eyes never breaking contact. It didn't blink or move like a normal being, it glided, effortlessly, the edges of its form blurring with the fog, like it was both there and not. I wanted to run, but my feet barely moved. It was like sinking in quicksand, every effort to break free made me slower, weaker. The more I stared, the more I noticed the face's skin, or what I thought was skin, was translucent, with strange veins of dark mist pulsing beneath the surface. It wasn't just unhuman, it was something else entirely. Then, something changed. The face tilted, like it was studying me, considering whether I was a threat or prey. The empty mouth twitched again, and suddenly, I felt a wave of cold wash over me that wasn't from the fog outside. It was inside me, seeping into my bones, stealing warmth and hope. My mind screamed at me to get away, but my body wouldn't listen. I was trapped, held hostage by the nightmare in front of me. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the face vanished. One moment it was there, watching, waiting, breathing decay and cold. The next, it was gone, like it had melted back into the fog, leaving nothing but silence and the faintest trace of that terrible scent. I stumbled backward, gasping for breath, heart hammering like a drum in my chest. The streetlights flickered weakly through the mist, casting long shadows that felt alive. I was shaking, drenched in cold sweat, and every instinct screamed to run home, lock the doors, and never look back. But even as I turned to leave, the feeling stayed, an icy thread winding around my mind, twisting every shadow into the shape of that impossible face. I forced myself to move, one shaky step after another, trying to put as much distance between me and where the face had vanished. But the fog, it wasn't just a patch of mist anymore. It had thickened, grown denser and colder, curling around my ankles like a living thing intent on holding me in place. Every breath I took felt like ice sliding down my throat. My lungs burned, but I kept pushing forward, desperate to escape. The world had shrunk to a narrow corridor of gray, the edges blurring, sounds muffled to a dull roar in my ears. I could barely hear my own footsteps, but I could hear something else, something faint but unmistakable. A soft, wet scraping sound, like nails dragging over rough wood, echoed somewhere just beyond the fog. My heart seized. I stopped dead, straining to listen, but the sound vanished as quickly as it came, swallowed by the thick silence. I told myself it was nothing, just the wind, but that didn't stop my skin from crawling. I broke into a run, legs pumping harder than they had in years, breath ragged and uneven. The fog clawed at me, cold tendrils wrapping around my ankles, slowing me down. The path ahead wavered, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I might be trapped in an endless loop, running nowhere. And then I saw it again. That face. Not far away this time, emerging slowly from the dense fog. It was closer, clearer, and even more impossible than before. The dark hollows of its eyes seemed to stretch wider, pulling the shadows in around them like a black hole. Its mouth twitched, a slow, eerie movement that sent a wave of nausea crashing through me. It didn't speak, but the silence was louder than any scream. I wanted to scream, to shout for help, but my voice was gone. My throat was dry, frozen tight. I could only stare, helpless and terrified, as it slid forward, an unearthly shadow drifting with the fog. I stumbled backward, tripping over a root hidden beneath the leaves. Pain shot through my palms as I hit the ground, scraping skin raw. I scrambled to my feet, the fog swirling wildly around me now, thicker and more alive than ever. The face followed without hesitation, gliding smoothly, relentless. Panic took hold, sharp and wild. I ran harder, pushing my body beyond its limits, muscles burning, lungs screaming. But no matter how far I went, the fog stayed close, wrapping tighter, colder. Then came the whispering. Soft at first, just beyond hearing, like the wind shifting through the trees. But it grew louder, clearer. It wasn't wind, it was words, murmured just out of reach. I couldn't understand them, but they sounded urgent, desperate, like a warning or a plea. I covered my ears, but the whispers pierced through, growing into a cacophony inside my head. The fog pressed against me, squeezing, filling every sense until I felt like I was drowning in cold, unseen water. I fell to my knees, gasping, overwhelmed. Then, the face was there, so close I could feel its cold breath, a sickly mist brushing my skin. The dark hollows of its eyes bore into me, empty yet alive, and I finally understood, this wasn't just some ghost story or nightmare. It was something else, something ancient, something that didn't belong in this world. I forced myself to stand, every nerve screaming, and sprinted blindly through the fog, branches whipping at my face, roots threatening to trip me. My mind was a chaos of fear and disbelief, but one thing was clear, I had to get out. Suddenly, the fog began to thin, the outline of trees becoming sharper, the sounds of the world returning. Relief flooded through me, warm and overwhelming. I burst out of the mist into a clearing, gasping for breath, shaking uncontrollably. But the face? It was gone. The clearing should have been a relief, a break from the nightmare. But instead, it felt like stepping into something even stranger. The fog hadn't vanished completely, it lingered at the edges, curling like a living thing reluctant to let go. And the silence was too thick, too heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. I stood there, trying to catch my breath, my heart pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. But then I noticed something else, something was off. The air was still, but faint whispers floated through the clearing. Not words, exactly, but sounds, soft, urgent murmurs that tickled my skin like a cold breeze. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but they felt alive, filled with a kind of desperate energy that sent a shiver down my spine. I strained to listen, heart racing. The whispers seemed to move around me, coming from every direction and nowhere at once. It was like the fog was trying to speak, trying to tell me something I wasn't meant to understand. And then the smells. The scent of decay lingered, stronger here than before, but mixed with something else, something metallic, sharp, and cold. It filled my nose and throat, making me gag. I covered my mouth, backing away slowly, but the smell clung to me, refusing to let go. I looked around, searching for the source, but saw nothing. No fallen animals, no rusted metal, just empty trees and thickening mist. Then came the sounds, soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails drumming on wood. It echoed through the clearing, unnerving and out of place. I followed the noise with trembling steps, pushing through the fog that curled around me like fingers. The tapping led me to an old wooden bench, half hidden beneath tangled branches. Its surface was scratched and worn, but what caught my eye was a series of symbols carved into the wood, strange shapes and lines I didn't recognize, arranged in a pattern that felt deliberate, almost ritualistic. My fingers brushed the carvings, and a cold shock ran through me. The whispers rose, swelling into a chorus of murmurs that filled the air, surrounding me like a living thing. Panic surged. I stumbled backward, breaking through the fog's grasp for a moment, but it pulled me back, tighter and colder. The world seemed to tilt, and I grasped a nearby tree to steady myself. The whispers grew louder, almost pleading now, but still unintelligible. My skin prickled as if invisible eyes were watching me from the shadows. I tried to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The fog thickened again, swallowing sound and light alike. Then, suddenly, everything went silent. No whispers. No tapping. Just an eerie, suffocating quiet. I stood frozen, heart racing, waiting for something to happen. And then I saw it, shadows moving at the edge of the clearing, twisting and shifting like smoke. I blinked, trying to focus, but the shapes blurred and flickered, never quite solid. They seemed to watch me, their forms stretching and shrinking in the mist, like they were alive and breathing. Fear pressed down on me like a heavy weight. I wanted to run, to escape this place and never look back, but my feet wouldn't move. The fog crept closer, tendrils brushing my skin, cold and wet. The whispers returned, softer now, like a lullaby sung by unseen voices. Then the face appeared again. Not as close as before, but unmistakable. Its dark hollows glimmered in the mist, its mouth twitching in that impossible way. It didn't move towards me this time. Instead, it lingered, watching silently from the fog's edge. I felt a strange pull, like the fog was calling me, beckoning me to come closer. And despite every warning, every instinct screaming to run, I stepped forward. I stepped forward, every nerve screaming in protest, but something I couldn't explain, kept me moving toward that face. The fog curled around me, cold and thick like a shroud, but my eyes locked on those dark hollows that felt endless and hungry. As I got closer, the face started to take shape in ways I couldn't have imagined. It wasn't just a mask of fog anymore. Its skin, or whatever covered its skull, was slick and translucent, like wet glass stretched over a twisted bone structure. I could see strange veins pulsing beneath the surface, veins filled with a thick, dark liquid that moved in slow, agonizing waves. Its eyes were the most horrifying part. Not eyes in the way we know them, but deep, black pits that shimmered with a faint red glow. They weren't just hollow, they were alive, watching, calculating. I swear I saw tiny sparks flicker within those depths, like embers dying in a long-forgotten fire. The mouth, or the absence of one, was a shifting void, a gap that warped and rippled like water disturbed by a stone. It never opened or closed properly, but somehow, I felt it was trying to speak, trying to communicate some wordless warning or threat. The air around it seemed to warp and ripple, distorting reality like heat waves on asphalt. I froze, heart hammering so loudly I thought it might burst from my chest. The face tilted toward me, almost curious, and then, in a voice that was not a voice but more like a vibration in my bones, it spoke. I can't repeat the words. They weren't words as we understand them. It was a sound that felt like a memory you can't place, a sensation that flickered between dread and sorrow. The message was clear, though, I wasn't meant to be here. This place, this fog, belonged to something older, something that didn't forgive trespassers. The cold wrapped tighter around me. My breath came out in ragged puffs, and I felt the icy fingers of fear curl around my soul. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs were glued to the ground, trapped by a power older than anything I've ever known. Then, the face moved closer, slowly, deliberately. It wasn't walking or gliding anymore. It seemed to melt, dissolve, then reform inches from my face. I could feel its breath, or whatever passed for breath, a cold mist that smelled of rot and forgotten places. The dark hollows of its eyes bore into mine, and in that moment, I felt everything, fear, sadness, anger, and something ancient, primal, and utterly alien. I blinked and the face warped, twisting into a grotesque smile that shouldn't have been possible. My stomach dropped as I realized this wasn't just a ghost or a trick of the fog. It was something else. Something that didn't belong in the world of the living. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled. The trees around the clearing bent as if caught in a silent storm. The fog thickened, swirling in violent spirals, and the air buzzed with a low hum that filled every corner of my mind. I broke free from the paralysis that held me and stumbled backward, desperate to escape this nightmare. But the face was everywhere now, in the fog, in the shadows, in the cracks of reality itself. It whispered in that impossible language, filling my head with words I couldn't understand but felt deep in my bones. I ran. I ran faster than I ever thought possible, legs pumping, lungs burning, heart hammering like a wild drum inside my chest. The fog whipped around me, thick and choking, but somehow I pushed through it, fueled by pure panic. The world blurred, every shadow twisting into that terrible face, every sound echoing with those impossible whispers. Behind me, I could still feel it, the presence, relentless and close. The face wasn't just a memory or a trick of the light anymore, it was a force, stalking me through the mist, relentless as death. Branches tore at my clothes, roots grabbed at my ankles, but I didn't stop. The cold fog was a wall pressing against my skin, stealing warmth and hope, but I refused to give in. Every step took me closer to the edge of the nightmare. Then, just when I thought I couldn't go any further, I broke through the fog's grasp and stumbled into the faint glow of the streetlights. The world snapped back into focus, the sound of distant traffic, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the ordinary night air filled with the smell of wet earth instead of decay. I collapsed on the pavement, gasping for breath, shaking uncontrollably. The fog was gone, replaced by the comforting hum of the city night. But the terror stayed, raw and alive inside me. I looked around, half expecting to see that face emerge from the shadows again. But there was nothing, only the quiet streets and the distant glow of windows. For a moment, I thought it was over. That I had escaped whatever nightmare had held me captive in that fog. But as I stood, something caught my eye. A faint, glimmering trail of mist lingered on the pavement, twisting like smoke from a candle. And then I saw it, a single dark hollow where a face should have been, staring up at me from the mist. I blinked, heart pounding, but it didn't disappear. It was a reminder, a warning that whatever I had encountered that night wasn't gone. It wasn't finished. I stumbled home, haunted by the memory, the scent, the whispers. That face in the fog wasn't human. It wasn't a ghost. It was something else, something ancient and unknowable. And I knew I'd never forget it. Even now, days after that night, the memory lingers. The fog, thick and suffocating, the face with its impossible eyes, and that sickening cold that seemed to seep into my bones. I keep replaying it in my mind, trying to make sense of something that defies understanding. Was it a hallucination? A trick of the mind? Maybe. But the details, the whispers, the smell of decay, the carved symbols, those felt real. Too real. And that lingering mist outside my window when I got home? That wasn't fog from outside. It was something else, something connected to that night. I've tried to tell people, but no one believes me. They say it's just a story, a nightmare, or the effects of too much stress. Maybe they're right. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And sometimes, when the night is quiet and the fog rolls in, I swear I see those hollow eyes watching me from the darkness. So if you ever find yourself alone in the fog, and you think you see a face staring back, remember this story. Remember the cold, the whispers, and the warning. Because some things in this world aren't meant to be seen. And some faces are not human. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more chilling tales that will keep you up at night. Stay safe, and keep your eyes open, you never know what might be watching from the fog.